Morning, everyone. On to one of our final AU Core Technical Design groups where we're going through the ballot reconciliation for the AU Core R2 ballot for working standards. I'd like to start with an acknowledgement of country and that we acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we all gather today, and that we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging, and extend our respects to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And we acknowledge the First Peoples as the first scientists, educators, and healers. In terms of the agenda today, we've got the usual business. And then we will go through and have an update from Ruben on the recent HL7 International Work Group meeting in September, which was in Pittsburgh. I'll give a bit of an update on where we are, and then we'll go through with the ballot reconciliation. That's going to include results from the AU Core Block Vote 1, which was sent round and that's closed earlier this week. We'll go through a change request, which is what is up for discussion and voting in today's ballot reconciliation call, which is Fire 52524, which is about choice of identifiers guidance being unclear for must support elements with identifier type. Then there are two items that we're going to walk through today, but we won't be making decisions on them. These are two items that have been referred out of the AU Core Technical Design Group to the Firework Group because these impact two or more specifications. So they're going to be treated as common items. And there was an email sent round on the mailing lists for the date and time of that. I think I've also got it in this presentation. Then we'll go through what's next. Does anyone want to add any other items to this agenda? All right, not hearing anyone. Let's go on to the usual business. So, approval of minutes. I'll just go to those now. These were sent round for approval. Click. Okay. This is where we went through and we made a number of decisions in our last call around allergies and encounters and conditions. We've got the attendees. We have the recording and the slides, transcript and chat log, and then we've got the minutes on what was discussed and the decisions that we made. Does anyone need more time to review these minutes? Okay, not hearing any. Would anyone like to make a motion to approve the minutes of our last call? Just go to the attendees list so you can see if you were there. Okay, I'll call again. Does anyone need more time to review the minutes before we approve them? Then I need to ask again for who is happy to motion approval of the minutes. If you attended, you've received the minutes, you don't need more time to review them.
Oh, happy to motion approval. Landon Riley.
Okay, thanks, Landon. Who is happy to second approval of the minutes?
I'm happy to second Shelley.
Okay, thanks, Shelley. I'll now move to find the poll, close down those other windows. Okay, you should see in front of you the poll for approval. The minutes of the previous meeting. Please vote affirmative, negative, or abstain. Okay, need a few more people to vote, and if you can't access the electronic poll, you can vote affirmative, negative, or abstain in the chat. If you can't access either, you can say your name and whether you are affirmative, negative, or abstain. So I'll close that poll now in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I'll end the poll and share the results. With the vote in the chat, that is 10 affirmative, 0 negative, and 9 abstain. The motion carries. The minutes are approved. Thank you, everyone. Okay, back to this. Updates and news. So in terms of AU-based reconciliation, and there was an action out of our last call, actually a couple of calls before that, where we approved moving a portion of guidance from AU Core into AU Base. That JIRA for AU Base was discussed and has been agreed at the last firework group. So that will be underway, so that's good. There are no new items that are coming up in the next AU Base reconciliation call that directly impact AU Core R2. I think again, a lot of them are either things that aren't in any specification yet or that impact e-requesting. Here's the details on the common items. We'll run through them so that you can see if you want to be involved in the resolution and decision making around those items. It's going to be at the AU Firework Group call on the 22nd of October at 11 a.m. It is the 22nd, right, Brett? Just checking.
Yep, that's right. That's
Okay.
the 22nd. Yeah.
Yep, so that's 11 a.m. Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra, 10 a.m. Brisbane. There's the link there. It's also on the AU Firework Group calendar. If you have an opinion on these, but you either can't attend or don't want to attend the meeting, always encourage people providing comments and feedback directly on the DIRAs themselves. Any of the comments on the DIRAs will be run through in the particular meeting. All right. Next bit of news, there's a new poll. There was a poll out already around no known current medications. That kind of closed and came out to a resolution. There's a new one, but Heath, you might be better speaking to what this is.
Sure. So a couple of weeks ago, I put out a request for a poll to gather information from vendors that how they record within their system themselves, not as an integration API or anything, just for users to enter the concept of no known current medications. So this, we had a number of respondents to that did it in various ways, and there was a few that actually had an explicit way of stating this by a user. And so we're just following up as a subsequent question on, okay, now that you have this concept of no known current medications in your record for a patient, how do you expose that through a FHIR API? And so that's what this poll is about, more targeting those that have the explicit concept in their system. And I'll put a few options on the table that I can think of, which are actually derived from existing IPS implementation guidance, and looking to there's always the option to add others. So you can see someone has actually stated that they represent it using a no known medications code, and another one has indicated that it's an empty medication request response. So we're just looking for anyone else that has those concepts explicitly recorded in their system to perhaps suggest not only if you've implemented it, but intend to implement it and know how you want to do it.
Thanks, Heath. Any questions on the Zulip poll? I suppose the context of why this is being asked is we recently deferred determining in AU Core how should no known current medications be represented in fire, but um, it is, I think, a hot topic. Okay. Other updates. Last tickets are still available, just a few left for the CDG and TDG Day in Canberra. I think there's about 95 to 100 people who've got tickets for the TDG Day. And I think we can do about 120. So there's still 20 places left. Final call for the R3 backlog community pitches. I know a number of people have spoken to me about it. I would encourage you to put them in if you can make it to Canberra, or you know someone who can be at Canberra to present on your behalf who would like to speak to this. This EOI is pretty simple. It's just a one-pager where you say, here's the profile I want, here's why I think we should do it now, and what the benefit is. So I think it's a pretty simple to submit the EOI, and there's a template on the website. The closing date is officially Monday next week. All right. Let me go through then and hand over to Ruben. If you're on the line, Ruben? No.
I was just in another meeting with Ruben, so I'm not sure if he's going to be a bit late coming into this one, Danielle.
All right, well, we might come back to that. I'll just go through the results of the block vote, and then we'll see if Ruben is on the line. So I'll just go past this. We'll do a quick ballot update then. Right, so we're in ballot reconciliation. Aim is end of October. It looks like we will actually finish pretty close to that, so that's really good. And then, whoops, we'll publish early next year. In between this, of course, with the December Connectathon, there'll be a snapshot that will be made available for the December Connectathon that we can test on to get confidence that on the decisions that we have made. Here's our rate of progress so far. So we're doing pretty good. All the issues have been triaged. We're sitting at 84% for reconciled, and there is the one that'll be here today because we've only got 3 left. So we've got 1 for voting today, and then there's 2 in the common issues, and that will bring us to completion of reconciling the ballot items, which is great. I have not updated the applied. It is bigger than that, but I missed doing that this morning, so apologies. Dushy, off the top of your head, do you know how many issues have been applied?
Sorry, struggling to find a mute button. Just check. We've got 1, 2. I think we have 2 applied so far.
Okay, so that should be 10% then. Excellent. Double the percentage. All right. Here's basically our ballot reconciliation sort of schedule. I haven't included the December Connectathon here, which really does kind of count as part of the process because we make all the decisions and then we go ahead and test it. So, but that's usually just the confidence at the end of that. Here's where we are in terms of our ballot reconciliation. So we've already held 2 meetings and we got through the targeted number there. For today, although that number says 6, 5 of those have been handled through the block vote. So there really is only 1 here. And then there'll be 2 in this common issue space. Then we're going to do a wrap up, basically at the end of October. We'll do that wrap up there. Okay, I think Ruben has entered the room. Ruben, are you with us?
Oh, I am. Sorry I was late.
No worries. Good timing. Did you want to run through the update from Pittsburgh?
Certainly, happy to do so.
Would you like me to keep sharing?
Yeah, you did get my slides, right?
I sure did.
Oh, good. Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Danielle. If you could, it's only 2 slides. So, hi everyone. Good to be with you, providing this update, and thanks to Danielle and the co-chairs for inviting me to provide this update. For those who don't know me, and hopefully that's very few of you, I work for HL7 International as the Deputy 5 Product Director, and I'm also a co-chair of the Terminology Services Management Group and Terminology Infrastructure Work Group. So these meetings these days have become quite the juggle for me. On this particular occasion, I was also the HL7 Australia Board Chair's representative in the International Council. So a lot of running around. Obviously, 10 minutes is not even close to enough time to go into anything in any great depth. So these 2 slides are peppered with links to the detail around all of these things, which I assume the slide deck will go into the minutes. So if you're interested in any of it, feel free to click the links or reach out to me separate to this meeting. So yeah, this was the 39th annual plenary and the 40th FI Connectathon, and it was the first time HL7 tried to do a hybrid event with some sessions, not all of them, supporting virtual web-enabled attendance. Just a quick word on that. I think the findings were, it was good to try it. There were some very important findings. Some things worked very well, other things not so well at all. Obviously, the rooms didn't have multiple microphones, and so if people were talking without a mic, that made it difficult for the virtual attendees to hear. But the feedback is taken on board, and I think we'll continue to elaborate to try and improve virtual and web-enabled attendance. Also, overall numbers were down over typical working group meetings and plenaries like this. I suppose part of the reason for that was the US government has only just sort of resumed participation in HL7 international standards development after the Trump administration came in until they appointed a new national coordinator or assistant secretary for technology policy. Basically, ASTP and ONC were just on pause and not participating in anything. They'd only recently come back into the fold, and I know that there were concerns from some in Europe and Canada about problems at the border and things of that nature. I fortunately did not have any trouble at the border, so thank heavens for that. I guess the biggest news of the whole week was the leadership change announcements. So Dr. Chuck Jaffe announced that he'll be stepping down as HL7 CEO after nearly 2 decades in the role. And a day or 2 later, Karen Van Hendrik announced, she was the Chief Operating Officer, announced that she will be stepping down a little bit sooner, but she'll be hanging around to help whoever is appointed to the role of CEO and also the new COO. Karen is probably the longest serving person left in HL7 since its founding just over 30 years ago. She knows every inch of the organization, and I think, as Chuck put it, is his right hand in everything. He doesn't make a decision without her. So 2 major leadership changes there. The HL7 board's succession planning committee has now been activated, or I should say the succession planning plan has been activated, and the SBC will be running that. You may have seen the links to the ads for the recruitment process. I hasten to add that they are not restricting applicants to people in the United States, though I expect very much whoever does get appointed may have to consider moving to the United States, mainly because so much of our funding and so much of our membership is in the United States. It will be a tough gig for whoever the new CEO is. HL7 is probably facing the biggest headwinds of change that it's ever had to experience, both with the new policies from the Trump administration, but also sort of broader challenges in becoming a more international organization rather than a US focused one. So watch this space. I'm sure there'll be information in the next 2 or 3 months. There are also new board members elected, international council chairs and TSC members, and you can see the details of that in the press release. They've introduced, sorry, just the pictures at the bottom, the first 2, obviously, Chuck and Karen. The next update is the introduction of an Interoperability Express Award. This is a very special award which was announced at this meeting and handed over to its first awardees. These are individuals who have completed 4 HL7 product family certifications. Believe it or not, there are quite a few who have done this. And if anyone on the call believes they've completed 4 of those, please get in touch with HL7 and they'll get your award sent to you. Lastly, the Global AI Challenge Award winners were also announced. This is a challenge that was announced a few months ago. Ken Rubin was running this on behalf of the board. I was really impressed by how many people actually put themselves forward. There were quite a few, and awards were duly handed out, including one leadership award for HL7 Australia member White Fox Consulting. So that was all great. Into the more detailed updates on the Connectathon, there were 29 tracks at this one. The track report is linked at the top. And there were some very interesting new tracks, including one on AI topics, AI transparency on FHIR, and also conversational interoperability, which Josh Mandel was running. The International Council had a full day meeting and received reports from the executives, and Graham provided them with a proposal around IPS localization policy, which they're all now looking at and considering, including ourselves. The meeting minutes has details on that policy. On the FHIR side, I guess, not surprisingly, the biggest discussions were about additional resources. So those not familiar with what this is about, the next release of FHIR, or R6, will be the first version of FHIR that will be completely normative. The only content in there will be either informative, things like examples and guidance, or normative content. Accordingly, everything that's not normative or trial use will need to move out of the R6 spec into an implementation guide. And obviously this raised lots of issues, concerns, worries, and required lots of planning. So a lot of that went on. One of the big ones was a decision that the artifacts that move out of the FHIR core spec will retain their URLs when they move into the IG specs as they mature towards normative status. There's still a lot of work to be going on in and around this, and work groups need to get everything decided or to some extent implemented by the 2nd of November. So it's a pretty challenging time for work groups at the moment. On
4
the-
minutes, Ruben. So,
Yeah, I'll speed it up. On the FHIR community process at the international level, the coordination committee there met with the new CEO of IHE International, and we had a good discussion on the possibility of adding assessment of conformance schemes for FCP specifications to the FCP. So Graham's got a bit of work on writing up that proposal. Lots of discussion on IPS, as you'd expect. Patient care work group, who's responsible for the IPS FHIR IG, were resolving some very minor items towards finalizing version 2 of IPS, which has subsequently been completed and is now published. There was a very good listening session on the governance of IPS, which was run by Mike Nussbaum from the Joint Initiative Council's Executive Committee, and also with me, a member of the IPS Coordination Committee. The slide deck is linked. And very excitingly, the Cross Projects Work Group in HL7, which is responsible for US Core, has created a project proposal, subsequently accepted, to create an IPS-aligned USA IPS FHIR implementation guide, or USA patient summary. I anticipate that there'll be lots for them to learn from the work that our affiliate is doing in this space, in particular on sort of harmonizing a national core with a national patient summary while being IPS aligned. So looking forward to see where that project goes. And finally, really, on the terminology side, the Terminology Services Management Group and Terminology Infrastructure Work Group voted to replace the representation of external code system metadata records. These are records that tell you about the metadata of a code system, not necessarily providing the content. That's moving from being represented as a FHIR code system resource to being an HTML page with an accompanying naming system resource instance for the technical details like URIs and OIDs and so forth. And that's sort of it in a nutshell. Any time for questions, Danielle?
yeah, we've got 2 minutes.
Great.
Does anyone have any questions for Ruben? Ruben did only get to, obviously, because it's a huge meeting, pull out a couple of bits. If there was something that you think might have been discussed at that meeting that you wanted a quick update on, you can also check in with Ruben now. All right.
Either I've blown
Just check
everyone's
the
mind
chat.
or I was very succinct. Thanks, Danielle.
No worries. So yeah, just checking the chat. No, that's all good. Okay, let's go on, and thank you very much for that update, Ruben.
No worries. Thank you.
All right, so we can zoom past a lot of the ballot update because, well, we've already done it. Just quick reminder on the screen for decisions we need to make. We're going to be making one of these. Consider for future use. We're going to say it's persuasive. We're going to say persuasive, but we want to change something about it. We're going to say it's not persuasive, and we're not going to make a change. Or we might say it's, well, the argument's not persuasive. There's a reason to change the specification, usually to add a clarifying set of words or to just in some way change the wording. Okay, let's get to the block vote. The block vote, which went out, was voted on. This was about all our deferred items. So everything that we intended to defer, and I'm just clicking on that now, was in this block vote for consideration. Thank you to those who voted. This is passed. So what we have is some suggestions on additional kind of search content, which would also change capability statements. That's what these two are. Then there was some of that consideration and enhancement around saying no known X or no history of X. We've got it on conditions, we have it on allergies, but we don't have a position in AU Core on procedures, medications, and immunization. It is still proposed that this is deferred beyond AU Core R2 because it requires work to actually go through and make that position and then test it. And so that was accepted, and that has passed. Any questions around those items or the vote? All right, I'll move on to the next one. Okay, so now we get up to what is under our vote in this meeting. And at this point, which I think Heath is going to speak to this item, I will hand over to you, Heath. Did you want to share?
I will, yeah.
Okay, let me just stop sharing. Okay.
Just bear with me for a sec while I get okay, so the change request on this one is 52524. So just very briefly, that is an item that was raised by myself. Given the text here, you can see that there was quite a complicated
Sorry,
response.
Heath, could you just zoom in just one more? It's just a little small. Yeah, that's better. Thank you.
Is that it? Okay?
I think
If
you
it's on
just
screen.
reset it right back to just one. Okay, cool. Thank you.
It doesn't all fit, but anyway,
Well-
so it's quite complicated. It's actually a multi-part response. So I thought I would just try and summarize that a little bit for your benefits. So 3 parts of it. The first part of it is about how to interpret must support obligations on an identifier element, where an identifier type, where any identifier type is allowed. And what I mean by any, as in this base data type of identifier, in addition to some particular profiles that we have specified in AU base. So this is the healthcare service new resource that I'm using as an example. So this is an example of where there is a must support with any identifier type plus some specific ones. The second part is in the particular area around the choice of identifiers section in the general requirements page. And there is some guidance around what AU core responders should do in the context of when there is more than one supported identifier. So what I showed previously was the healthcare service resource that had a choice of profiles, including any identifier, but there are these other scenario profiles, such as patient, where we've actually got slices of the identifier that has specific identifier types for IHI, Medicare number, DVA number. And given the definition above here, it is talking about supported identifiers are those identifiers that have been sliced. And then in the guidance here, we're talking about at least one supported identifier type where the identifier is known. So the key word there is supported identifier, which I actually missed in the context when I raised this issue, and the definition of supported identifier being someone that is sliced. The third part is further down in the section where we talk about systems may support populating and processing other identifiers. And that's not a requirement of AU core. So I took I had some concern about the word processing, given that it was the term process is in a specific obligation code in FHIR. Now that we adopt obligations, and it's much more specific than no error, and which is what the obligation is for identifiers in the must support identifiers in AU core. So those three parts are what was actually raised there. And I'm very briefly just bring up the general requirements section. So I'm talking about sections of this page here, general requirements, and in particular around interpreting the elements as must support, and this particular section here, choice of identifiers. Okay, so moving on to any questions about what the issues are that was being raised. Final note, this page is actually informative and only provides guidance on how to interpret the must support obligation codes. And the general, the conformance guidance can basically use informal language to attempt to describe the intent of these conformance and obligation codes that are actually specified in the normative part of the profiles. So stepping through the resolutions for the three parts of this, overall, the co-chairs have suggested that it is not persuasive with modification. So regarding the first one, which is about not having specific or not understanding clearly what to do when there is a must support on the identifier that actually uses the identifier, any identifier type. We are indicating that the choice of identifier provided guidance where profiles are identifier elements with specific supported identifier types representing using slices. Okay, that's what we're talking about. When there is no supported identifier types representing as slices, the must support complex elements apply. So basically, when there is no slice, there's nothing special. So we revert basically to the guidance in a previous section in that page around complex elements. and that there was no need to change any of the obligations, which I had actually suggested to change a reduced set of obligations in that recommendation, but it was deemed not necessary. And it was agreed that there should be some additional guidance in that particular section, that is talking about what to do when there are multiple cardinalities of complex elements. And there's a number of places throughout AU Core where that occurs, not just identifiers, but also if we think about a patient telecom, patient address, et cetera, there are a number of them. So as a result, there has been a new JIRA ticket raised for that particular modification that's suggested. So not persuasive, with modification being that there is a new ticket raised. Second part of it, which is around the idea that at least one supported identifier represented as a slice. There was some acknowledgement that it has been a little bit unclear, and we've had a number of questions at Connectathons, etc., that what to do if some of those supported identifiers are not, or all of those supported identifiers are not known. As an example, patient, again, if there is no known IHI, Medicare number, or Veteran Affairs identifiers, what identifier shall I populate in that particular case? So in order to improve that current guidance, we've added this additional section here. So the current part is shall correctly populate the element with identifiers from at least one supported identifier type, where the identifier is known, or any identifier when no supported identifier type isn't known. Just interject, put your hand up, whatever, if there's any questions on this. There
I
is
will
a,
have a suggested change to that because it's missing, I think, a couple of keywords.
okay. Would you like to address them now?
I think so. So this is meant to be the plain language explanation of what happens with the populate if known obligation. In the special case where there's multiple slices, like there are different supported choices. And in this case, the first bit talks about a supported identifier type where it's known. The addition just says, or any identifier when no supported identifier is known. There's this is going to be hard to word. There's a knownness that comes to the first bit. Like you still have to, that's the populate if known. You only need to populate with an identifier you know. So that bit of just or any identifier is actually any known identifier. Like if it was an MRN, for example, MRNs aren't supported, but if you know an MRN, then supply it. But you don't have to supply, you know, like you don't have to supply a particular or an identifier if you don't know one.
So you're suggesting an additional, oops, sorry.
I mean, I still
suggesting
think
known
yes.
in there?
I'm suggesting that we need to stick in front of or any the word known. Because this is only applies to known identifiers. That's the populate if known obligation.
So there.
Yeah.
Any known identifier when no supported identifier type is known.
So it's like if you know a supported identifier type, do that. And if you don't, supply some other known identifier. When you know it. There's a lot of known knowns.
Yeah, I guess when I suggested this change, it was implied, but if you want to make it explicit, anyone else, any objections to that suggested change? I don't have an objection personally, but other than the fact that there's lots of knowns.
Well, I'll just say that I thought the second half of the sentence was implied anyway. Like we said,
Yeah.
correctly populate from at least one identifier type where it should say that identifier type is known. And then we didn't say what happens when you don't. So that is the second case. And I think I assumed from reading this that it was implied from just the populative known business. Maybe it needs 2 bullet points.
We could do that as well. If it would make it clearer.
Because I think the question is how many people on the line are understanding what is meant to be plain language description of we've put must support on identifiers, and we, like any other element, we mean if you know it, supply it. But then we've called out a few special ones as must support, and we've gone, well, for patient, you should must support IHIs, for example. And so the thing that's trying to be explained here is if you know an IHI, supply it. And if you don't, then the element obligation still applies. Like you might have something else like an MRN or a pensioner concession card. Not that that would be particularly useful in patient matching.
So rather than perhaps getting into the wordsmithing of this, shall we look at the intent of this change and then we leave it to the editorial team to come up with how to actually whether it's a second dot point or a sub dot point or the
Right.
specific wording. So is that acceptable?
Let's proceed on that basis and we'll see.
Any objections to that basis?
Can I just ask a question? Are there profiles where we don't have a supported identifier type?
Yes,
Yes,
that healthcare
there
service one
are.
that I just showed.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay.
There is a
I was
table
just-
that identifies which, like in the section, there's a table that identifies which identifiers this applies to specifically.
So this table
Because
here
it's
is
meant
the
to
ones.
indicate, this is meant to be a special section on what does it mean for you that not only is the identifier element must support, but then there's this extra thingy. So we've got a table of where there's an extra thingy.
Yeah, so I think 2 bullet points because there's the 2 specific situations you're trying to deal with there.
So keeping in mind, we're actually this is not addressing the issue with the healthcare service. Basically, that was the first part of this, was that the healthcare service example where there are no slices, i.e. no supported identifiers, is just like any complex element with a multiple cardinality. Okay, so that was the first previous slide. This one is about those that do have supported identifiers, but the system doesn't know those identifiers for this particular instance that it's creating, and hence what to do in that particular case. So we're actually talking in the context of these 4 profiles and these supported identifiers in those contexts. So if as an example, a practitioner, if you don't know the HPII, what identifier do you need to provide to satisfy the obligation of if known, populate if known? And we're basically proposing that any known identifier will be populated. So at least one of any known identifier.
If the cardinality is mandatory, yes. It does come into play with an at least one, but yes, I agree.
Are you ever informed of what that identifier is, though?
It's up to the, we've said, if you've got an IHI, use it as an example.
Yeah.
If you've got a Medicare number, then you may use it if you don't have the identifier, IHI, or a DVA. So provide at least one of the supported identifiers. But if you don't know any of those, then provide one that you do know. And in the context of, say, a hospital system, it might be the medical record number.
Yeah,
But we're not stipulating that because they're not actually supported identifiers in the context of AU Core.
So therefore, it should be only a supported identifier then.
We
Not
came
in
at
this
it from a different
definition.
direction. We didn't even start really with supported identifiers. We said you need to support patient identifiers. Are there any special ones that we want to call out? Because the position that we took was that you should be sending around a patient identifier. And if you don't have an IHI, Medicare, or DVA, but you have an identifier you can share, you should be sending that. And that is what is trying to be represented here. I think it'll probably particularly be more relevant for organizations and practitioners and practitioner roles where there isn't such a ubiquitous kind of identification, especially for organizations that aren't eligible for HPIOs, for example. And I don't actually think we even called out a specific one for organization. We said you should support it. So if you have an identifier, that's not in this section, but if you have an identifier for an organization, oh no, we did. Good. HPIO and ABN.
But if you don't have either of those, then what do you have? And we're not saying just provide one that you do know. If you've got one at all. If you don't know any identifier, you can not populate it. But if you know one, provide at least one. Okay, so along the same lines, there's a subsequent section in after this table, there is an example to try and articulate what is being stated generally. And we're basically just looking at adding additional text in line with that previous change as well. There's a note there around that this has an impact on AUPS because there is a similar statement in AUPS, but that's not necessarily relevant to this particular change request. Okay, looking at the third part of this issue is around the processing of other identifiers. So it was intended to indicate that the systems can support other identifiers and processing them was an informal generalization of the behavior of that aligns with ignore, handle, process, and display obligations. The term accept is often used in guidance throughout the AU core, and hence the proposed change to avoid this overlap with processing and the process obligation is to change processing to accepting other identifiers. So that is the simple change to, hopefully simple, this line here. So replacing that word with accepting other identifiers. So that's in a nutshell. There is, out of all of that, it is not persuasive with modification. Some changes to the wording around any known identifier, the similar changes for the example around patient identifier, and a minor change to the final statement around may support populating and accepting. So that is my motion to accept these proposed changes with the editorial team to tidy up the exact wording with the same intent and structure, whether it's using it as subsequent dot point, etc., as they see fit. That's my motion.
Okay, thank you, Heath. Oh, I think you need to click back down again. I think we've just lost the third part. Yeah, thank you. So that is the substance of the motion, which is also on the JIRA itself. The proposed disposition has very similar wording. Now, are there any comments or questions on what was just presented, and any other suggestions? Okay. Does anyone have any concerns about this, or should we proceed to a motion? All right. Hearing none. Heath, would you like to make a motion?
I thought I did.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I thought we'd just open it up for comment and question. So if we take that as a motion, who would like to second?
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Mandy. Any other comments or questions while we move to the poll? No. Hang on, there's a poll already being shared that I have to end. Okay, there we go. I've launched the poll for the current motion. Please vote affirmative, negative, or abstain on the proposed informative wording changes in the must support section of AUCOL. Right, we need a few more people to vote, and of course you can also pop your vote in the chat if you can't vote in the poll. Okay, I'm going to count down in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I will end that poll and I will share the results with what is in the chat. We have a 15 affirmative, 0 negative, 8 abstain. The motion carries. We will make those wording changes. Thank you, Heath. Okay, so that was the last ballot reconciliation item that we were going to go through and vote on today, but there are a couple more that we want to actually show that are what are going to be in the common issues. So I'm just going to share my screen. And I'll come back down to, okay, back down to here. Okay, and I'll just double check. Are there any other items that people want to discuss before we move on to just doing a quick overview of the common issues that'll be discussed at the next firework group? Okay, hearing none. We have two. These came in through a UCOR. One is normative and one is editorial. Just a reminder that the discussion for this, where voting will be undertaken, is next Wednesday, so that's 22nd of October. We've got the time and the link here. So we've got the two. There's one that was raised on the diagnostic result observation profile. That would be normative potentially. And the specifications this impacts are base core and patient summary, because the issue raised, and we'll go into that shortly, is really starts in base, and so we inherit it really in core, and then AU patient summary also inherits that. So it needs to be considered across the three specifications. The next one is guidance on relationship to other IGs. It's not accurate. This is referring to the diagrams like the cake layer diagram and the circly dot ones that is in the relationships page in the IG. This diagram is in all HL7AU IGs just about. So it's in base, core, patient summary, and AUE requesting. So that is also something that is going to be considered at a common issues meeting. I'll start with the first one, just looking at time. Okay, so this first one, I'll just click on this. So this is proposing a profile change, sort of. All right, so the comment that was raised, which I think are more kind of two statements of fact, but they do imply things that we should discuss, is that the diagnostic result observation allows for a reference to a pathology result in the part of list, but the documentation explicitly says not to use diagnostic result profile for pathology results. And it says that the pathology result profile only allows for part of as being pathology results and doesn't also allow diagnostic result. So this is being kind of considered and an investigation was done. Let me just show you what the profiles are. So is that big enough, or should I make it one more bigger? I can't see any thumbs up or hear anyone. Is this
Maybe a smidge bigger.
okay? All right. So I'll go to the differential table. Actually, I'll start up here. So the purpose of the diagnostic result profile, and we've got 2 of 3 in AU Core at the moment. So what we had was a diagnostic result observation profile, a pathology result observation profile, and a diagnostic imaging result observation profile. During the work on AU Core R1, we decided to de-scope from the current work the diagnostic imaging, but that is on our backlog for us to include. We sort of also subsequently had a look at diagnostic result, what's different about this compared to pathology and imaging, and taking the work from AU base. The intention is that there are other diagnostic investigations than those that are categorized as pathology or imaging, things like sleep studies. Depending on where you fall on that, you can decide cardiology kind of exams are either imaging, or some of them aren't considered imaging. And so there's a few things, audiology, for example, that fall into this sort of other space. And the intention was to have a profile that we could say, look, if you're not pathology and you're not imaging, you can use this other. But if it is a pathology test, then use the pathology result profile. And then eventually, when it's an imaging one, go use the imaging profile, because that has all the expectations and terminology that reflect kind of current agreements. When we have a look at diagnostic result observation in AU Core, what there is this kind of has member bit, which allows you to use the observation itself as a grouper. So it could be a grouper for multiple different kind of results. Classic examples of that can include things like blood tests. And at the moment, it includes both members, so individual members of this, whatever it is, panel or group, to be some kind of other, but they can also be pathology result observations. This is actually a little bit of a mistake in that it should include AU-based diagnostics as well. What happened when we removed the AU core profile is we forgot to set it back to AU base. So if we go look at AU base, it also says, you know, we can have a diagnostic investigation, and we can, we recognize that we're saying that individual things in a study, in a group, in a panel might be also other. They might also be imaging, or there might be individual members of the panel that are categorized as pathology. So that was the original intention of the AU-based profile. And AU Core has picked that up and changed the AU-base references to core. But then when we did the scoping work, we forgot to put back diagnostic imaging from AU base and just took it out entirely. So that's actually a bit of a defect. Regardless, Andy has raised the question of, is this something that we should be allowing, given that diagnostic result observation says it's, you know, it's not for pathology? There's basically questioning, we have to, I guess, re-question, or we should question the foundational assumption. The reason why AU Base has this and AU Core has this was that there was an expectation that there might be studies or groups or series that might have individual tests in them, and that individual test might be typically categorized as pathology or imaging, and in which case it should use the better profile. So that was the original assumption, that that was actually relevant. And I think we need to reconsider that, and that's going to be discussed and voted on at the firework group. But if anyone on the line has an opinion about whether or not that foundational assumption is actually valid and useful, or whether or not that's actually not something that should be carried forward, I'd love you to speak now, and we can add that into the minutes and bring that to the common meeting if you can't attend.
I have a suggestion, but I am still researching this, so I can't say anything without knowing some data and evidence and research behind it. So can I grain check?
You can come along to the meeting next Wednesday.
Thank you.
No worries.
So this is just a heads up, Danielle, that it's going to be discussed next Wednesday.
Yes, it is for Mandy though.
I might not. What I'm suggesting is it's all that it is good. I'm looking into another research that might help us, and I'm very much grateful for the attention to details everybody has put in. I have to congratulate everyone, and I'm very how does the word? I appreciate it, and I'm very grateful.
Thanks, Mandy. David, and then Dr. I think it's Jadu. I'm sorry, I don't know how to pronounce your name.
Yeah, Jadu is right.
Okay.
David? My imaging is not strong, but I was under the perception that some imaging tests, they want to know what some renal or kidney function tests are, so they might want to know what some pathology results are, and therefore the pathology observations for those things would be more relevant. And hence that having the option of pathology along with imaging under a more general thing is relevant. But I could stand corrected.
Thanks, David. Dr. Jadu?
So when we say diagnostic result, so what do you mean by diagnostic result? When you have a blood test, it is not a diagnostic, it is a test, it's a result, blood result. So as David just said, it should be pathology result or imaging result. It is not a diagnosis, it is just a result, and the diagnosis will come after. So I don't know whether it is right to say diagnostic result.
Oh, I think it's a shortened, so the title of the profile is a shortened way to say that it's a result from a diagnostic investigation. So audiology, for example, hearing tests or sleep studies or there's a few more, but I don't have the list on me. I think they're listed in AU Base as some examples.
Lung functions is a good one.
Lung function, yep.
So yeah, so what I'm trying to say is that they are not diagnosis, they are all result. So that's what
Correct.
I'm trying to say. So when we say diagnosis means you have diagnosed the patient already. So that means that's a different, different wording. I don't know, just correct me if I'm wrong, but when we say result, diagnostic result means you have already diagnosed the result, the pathology result, you have diagnosed the patient already. So that's not what happens. So I thought it should be, a pathology result or imaging result or sleep apnea, whatever sleep test result, and the diagnosis will come later. That's my opinion. I don't know whether.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's not a requirement of the profile. I think what we're running into is just naming. This title doesn't. This title, I think, is trying to put a meaningful label on the intention that there'll be some diagnostic examination, and the result from that, which doesn't necessarily include the diagnosis and probably wouldn't, is something that comes later. This is the result coming back from that. So it's putting the word diagnostic in front of result because it's not just a result. Yeah.
But that first sentence does talk about specialists. So particularly a specialist might actually be giving their diagnostic opinion as a response back to you.
Yes. So yes, that's right. So I don't know. Look, looking to me, I'll be a little bit confused when I say diagnostic result, but if it is there, then but that's what I think. Sorry.
Thank you. Oh, I see Andy. Awesome. I was just running through Andy as a heads up for people that on this item that is going to be brought to next Wednesday's firework group so that people could come if they're interested. Did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, sure. The main thing I was trying to, I guess, rectify in my head was there seemed to be an inconsistency between AU Base and AU Core in the treatment of this. And I wasn't saying one was right or wrong. It's just that there was a certain assumption made seemingly in AU Base that it was a kind of a different overlay in AU Core. So I just thought getting that consistent. I think that's the issue, but it takes a bit of reading to read the different profiles to figure out how they lined up. But yeah, it was about so those three kind of categories of imaging, pathology, and I think other, and then what the related or the kind of the child elements could be for each of them. I just wanted some, I guess, was seeking consistency around that. Yeah, has member bit.
Yep.
So in summary, the resolution or the proposed resolution is to add back in AU Base diagnostic imaging.
And that'd be absolutely fine because I think that resurrects the consistency.
All right.
Is my understanding correct, Danielle? That
Yeah, that is the proposed.
That sentence that you're hovering over there is basically the recommendation.
Resolution is to make them consistent because I think on investigation, as an editor of AU Core, I think we just made a mistake when we when we removed AU Core diagnostic imaging out of the scope instead of replacing it with AU Base, which is what we should have done. We just deleted it.
Dropped it.
And so that is the mistake that we bring it back into alignment is proposed, I guess.
Yep, that'd be great.
So that's okay, so that's this one. Did anyone want to talk any more about this one before I move on to the next item? All right, not hearing anyone. Let's go to no, not that one. Okay, I need to go off here. Okie dokie. So, and if you're happy to talk to it, I'll get you to do so again. But did you want me to go to the page first or just after?
Going to the page would be good.
So here.
Yeah. So I know that Brett has indicated that there is wording to kind of try to imply the intention of the diagram as opposed to the diagram. So when the issue I have is when I look at that diagram, I'm pretty kind of objective when it comes to the structure. And to me, this is kind of telling me that that AU requesting is built on AU Core. AU Core is built on AU Base. AU Base is built on the fire standard. And because it's not really the case, rather those blue kind of pieces may take things from Australian realm definitions directly without having any kind of thing to be said in AU Core. So I think that becomes more logical if these three kind of base components are not represented as the sole foundation and rather maybe stagger them or something to give a better indication that when we build these higher order implementation guides, they actually can harvest from different layers of fire specifications. I think it's especially someone who is coming in fresh, they may not realize that from the diagram. And I know this has been prosecuted before and I lost the battle before, but I love the opportunity in the new ballot to resurrect.
Which is, I think, a perfect segue into this is a revisit. I think the current resolution describes, I guess, a summary of the position that was last time. That I guess in summary, it's that it's conceptual. It's not actually normative, and it doesn't, anyway. It's that this is a conceptual diagram showing categorization rather than an architectural diagram. That being said, this is going to come back to the work group on Wednesday next week. So if you love this diagram, hate this diagram, come along to that meeting because we're going to talk about it. Does anyone want to go into more detail now, noting we've got the opportunity next Wednesday on this diagram? All right, not hearing any. Oh, Brett.
Oh, I just want to say, if we do get through the revisit vote, it would be good if there were suggestions as to what the changes would be specifically. If we're going to do that on Wednesday. Yep.
All right, thank you, Brett. Okay, so that's the two items that are coming to next Wednesday's call, the firework group. Let's talk about what's next. So this is where we are. We did actually get through our 6 items there, so that's great. The final 2 items for AU Core that impact us are that next Wednesday call, and then we'll be going into an AU Core R1 wrap-up before we go into a TDG face-to-face workshop in Canberra. If you don't yet have tickets, don't forget to grab those, where there'll be some AU Core R3 backlog pitches, including, I think, some of those that we just deferred. There'll also be some AU patient summary workshops looking at things around hot topics and in particular looking at, gosh, I think it's actually that policy that is in the Pittsburgh update. I'll just go back to it. Oops. I think there's an update in here.
Yep, International Council meeting minutes.
Yeah, so the International Council proposing an IPS localization policy, and there'll be a workshop run on how do we address that, what's meaningful for Australia on that November day. Let me go right back to the end. Apologies. Oops, I went too far. Okay, just finally, agenda for our next call. Agenda for our next call is hopefully reporting back on the successful disposition of those common issues. We can say that AU Core R2 ballot reconciliation is now done. We need to then look at status and next steps and start talking through as well the December Connectathon and how we want to go forwards with starting AU Core R3. Does anyone want to add another item to put on the agenda for our next call? All right, not hearing any. I think I'm going to bring this meeting to a close. Give ourselves 10 minutes back.
Sorry, Danielle.
Yeah.
Really sorry to interrupt
That's
you
okay.
ending the meeting. Can I just, not a formal item on the agenda, but a sort of placeholder, 5 to 10 minutes, during which I think the likes of Andy, Brett, and I may have something to say to the TDG around planning for the operationalization of the Australian Governance and Operation Manual. Not 100% sure if we'll be ready at that point, but just want to reserve the opportunity if there is time on the agenda.
Yeah, no problems. We can put that up front in the bit just after usual business. And if it
Okay.
doesn't work out this meeting, then we can just bump it to the next one.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay.
This is on the 30th, Ruben.
Yeah. Aware.
Okay. Okay. Are there any other comments or items for the agenda? Okay, then thank you everyone for your time today. I'm glad we've got through those items and I look forward to seeing some of you next Wednesday.
Thanks,
Thank you
Danielle.
all.
Thank you.